In Star Trek First Contact, what were the words spoken by Data right before he smashed into the coolant chambers in engineering? Go!
Resistance is futile.
Correct. What species of whale was saved by Captain Kirk in 1987 in San Francisco to avert a 23rd century ecological disaster?
The answer is humpback whales.
Correct. What terms did Starfleet use to describe the Bajoran prophets residing in the wormhole adjacent to Deep Space Nine?
Are they called wormhole aliens?
Correct. On what deck is engineering on the Enterprise 1711D?
Oh, geez. 10, I think.
36. Correct. How do you feel?
I do not understand the question.
How do you feel?
Well, I would tell my mother I feel fine. How are you feeling, Mike? Welcome, everyone, to
Can I
Yelling
tell
at
you,
Gaseous Anomalies.
I was not expecting to see his mom there, and I love that little scene, very short scene that it is, that they have in Voyage Home right after the little recreation that I just did. And my God, that actress didn't age a day in 20 years. She looks great.
Yeah, it's Jane Wyatt from Father Knows Best. She was an Emmy Award-winning actress. Very much in demand at the time. Yeah, again, everyone, welcome to Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. I'm your host, Captain Matt Ross, accompanied by XO, Michael Pontone, doing his impression of the computers from Star Trek IV. How are we doing tonight, Mike?
Not bad. I love that scene. I mean, I love Voyage Home. It's one of my favorites. Not my my ultimate favorite, although it does have my favorite Sarek line in it, and just the most beautiful capturing Vulcans in a nutshell, and their kind of, majestic, quiet humanity, where he just says to Spock, Vulcanity, but where he says, your friends are, what does he say? Something along the lines of, like, your colleagues are people of good character?
Yes, that's exactly what he does say. I mean, this actually wraps up the storyline that we see from here. And
Absolutely.
That's what's really cool about it. It's brilliant. But before we get into the story, I just want to wish a whole lot of our friends a blessed season of Diwali and a blessed holiday to everyone, and for those who celebrate. But to get into this story, tonight we're talking about Journey to Babel, a different religious type of title over there. Is it Babel or Babel? What did you learn in school when you were younger? Was it Babel or Babel?
Babel.
What do you think? Babel. That's what I always learned. It's a miscommunication, which is what that is. And that's kind of the basis for this story. Journey to Babel was written by D.C. Fontana, and it was directed by our hero director, Joe Pevney. This is an interesting story. I loved it for the fact that it's what I like to call it F is for Federation. It gets you a little bit behind the scenes of what the Federation is, which Gene Kuhn and D.C. Fontana and the directors all kind of fleshed out. This wasn't the original idea of Roddenberry's. It was more Gene Kuhn's idea, but this is the global organization behind it. I really like this episode. In fact, this is one of my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes. I'm going to tell you it's one of my highest scores. It's a hell of a lot better than the last episode we saw. I'm sure you agree with that, right?
Oh, my God, yes. the let's put women back in the kitchen, let's scramble their brains and make them horny. Yes. Oh my God, what a horrible episode.
Come on. Which cloud would you rather, be married to? You want to go with Galactus, who will eat you and kill everybody.
I don't care. It'd be quick. There's no malevolence about Galactus either. He could make you like Norrin Rad and have you fly half naked through outer space on a spaceboard, on a surfboard. Half naked. Try full naked.
Well, no, he actually wears like swimming trunks in some of the early Kirby work, Yeah. But let's read the NBC press release, if you don't mind, from October 19th, 1967. It says Jane Wyatt guest stars. That's right. Jane Wyatt guest stars as Mr. Spock's Earthling mother in Journey to Babel, a drama in which murder and pursuit by an alien vessel plague the Enterprise as it transports ambassadors to a vital council meeting on NBC television network's Star Trek Colorcast, Friday, November 17th, which is when it actually was on. This is a really interesting story in that it fleshes out a lot of the things. And it's kind of almost like a day in the life of the Enterprise. I like it from the get-go. In the opening, you see a shuttlecraft landing. The reason why they used that, by the way, was not because the Vulcans hate transporters. It's because they were trying to save a buck. It cost a lot of money to do the transporter effects. and the price was per person in order to beam people up and down. So they actually reused the shuttle effect from the Galileo 7 if you watch the non-remastered edition. I like the remastered edition. You get to see like the shuttlecraft more in action. What'd you think of that?
I think I only saw the remastered edition. Yeah, it looks nice and smooth. It looks a little basic, but not bad.
Yeah, I do like that entire set, actually. Matt Jeffries made that original set where it looks like the landing bay, and you have like the two towers at the end where people are watching. But enough of, that special effects stuff. I do like in the beginning where McCoy's complaining to Kirk about, geez, I got to wear like my dress blues.
Uniform. Yeah.
Dress uniforms, spit and polish. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stand this.
Yeah, I actually do like that. It kind of reminds me of putting on my tie every day, although, you know what, I don't mind putting on my tie every day. I used to call it the corporate yoke, but I enjoy, since Mike and I are attorneys, we do tend to wear suits and ties, although a lot of our colleagues seem to have forgotten that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, a lot of people, but, whatever. It's the state of the world we live in so far, but we can come to the prices later. I just still can't believe they paid per piece to beam it down, so... And then we get to see the honor guard as they come on in onto the hangar deck, and we see the first taste of the Vulcan ambassador, who's Ambassador Sarek. This entire little opening bit, I enjoy it tremendously. Although you kind of have to question Kirk at this point, because there's that final line where he goes, Spock, you could go down to the planet and see your folks. And he goes, Captain, Ambassador Sarek, and his wife are my parents. And then the music goes, dun-dun-dun. It's like, you should have at least known that. Although, Vulcans are secretive. What did you think of that opening?
No. I mean, listen, it's obvious to me because I know Sarek. I love the original series movies, so I knew who Mark Leonard was, and he also makes some appearances in TNG. He's an important character, and he's referenced nicely in the 2009, not even reboot, just continuation in the Kelvin universe. I love Sarek. I think he's great, and I think it shows that, I like when there's smart writing, which is saying Spock is not just a good person. He's not just a person. He's not just a Vulcan. He's a good person. He's a good Vulcan.
Yeah.
And generally, in my experience, it's sad to say, good people often have good parents, and bad people often have bad parents. That's not a golden rule, but I'm just saying that it would make sense that Spock, for the integrity that he had, would have had good parents. And I really like him and his mom and his dad and Mark. Wait, what's his name? Mark Leonard?
Yes.
Mark Leonard and Leonard Nimoy are doing such good jobs being emotional beings who are suppressing their emotions, who are obviously feeling something, but are choosing not to act on it.
They are the models for which all Vulcans are made. They hit it on the mark. I would say that later versions of Star Trek, even through, I guess we could call it legacy treks, they're a little bit, either they're too robotic and stiff. Although I would tell you that Tim Russ's Tuvok, I think, is closest to them. He has more screen time in some ways than Spock and Sarek. Not Tuvix. Tuvix must die. No, Tuvok. Tuvok, I actually enjoy his performance.
Yeah, I love Tuvok.
Yeah. I actually like Kirstie Alley, but her as a Vulcan, although she's explained as being part Romulan, although I do like Robin Curtis, not as much. I think Next Gen doesn't have that many Vulcans, and Discovery is so off the mark, and so is Strange New Worlds of what Vulcans are.
God, I know. I really didn't like it. No. Peck's Spock he acts like Data. He acts naive. That was what I was reflecting on as well. Data, what's the difference between Data and Spock? Data is naive. He doesn't realize that he's having emotions. Vulcans know exactly what's going on. They're making the choice to not give in to those emotions, but Peck is playing it as he's unfamiliar with human emotions. So it's the wrong move.
It's not only that. They also have, I think, actually the best of the newer Spocks is Zachary Quinto. I think he hits the Nimoy-esque type of the way he's carrying it, but he's
a little too arrogant for me.
Yeah, I don't particularly like any of the new treks from 2009 forward, which actually fits, anything by JJ. But just as an aside, Mark Leonard is the only Star Trek character to play a Romulan, a Vulcan, and a Klingon.
Oh, I didn't know he was a Klingon.
Yes, he's a Klingon. He's the Klingon commander that you see in the opening of the motion picture. So,
no joke.
Yeah, that's right. He had the most pieces before we have later characters like Jeffrey Combs come on into play. But that aside, one thing about this story that made this also popular, NBC loved the story. Stan Robertson, the NBC connection, or the overseer, if you will, of the Star Trek group, the reason why he really liked that, it was DC Fontana writing it, and he loved the fact that we don't have to teach people how to write Star Trek. She knows how Star Trek is done, and we don't have to explain where Vulcans' hearts are or how things are done. He loved that fact, that it didn't need a lot of correction. Like most of the other stories we've seen so far had 15 and 16 rewrites. This had 6 rewrites, but that's only because they kept adding and changing a little bit here and there, not rewriting the entire scripts like they had done for prior episodes. So because DC Fontana got what the characters are, and that's what NBC liked. And now I am going to knock on Discovery. I will, as I mentioned last time, the writers actually had to go to Star Trek boot camp in the middle of the first season because everyone's saying, you guys don't really know what Star Trek is. I would argue that boot camp failed because they still don't know what Star Trek is. It's bizarre. Here's a question, though. What are their last names? Are they, Sarek and Amanda Johnson? What are their what are the last names? You want to go over to the Sareks? Yeah, I know there's no last names. It's an alien culture, but I always imagine that they have a weird last name or something just like that. Why don't you come on over for dinner? We'll have some plomeek soup, everybody, says Amanda. That's what I always picture her, but I love that opening. And then we come to our next area. Is there anything you want to add more beyond the opening on this, or your feeling on that?
No, and just in general, talking about the quality of the episode, and we're going to get into it, so much happens in this episode. And it goes into so many different places. There's so many different tropes and twists and turns and new characters. And that's why I hate it when there are episodes that have huge plot holes or no explanations or nothing really happens or they spin their wheels or they say something twice. It's I know for a fact that 45 minutes is a long time. You can get a lot in there. Look at these guys, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really got a lot into this. The Enterprise is on a diplomatic mission carrying over 150 delegates to a planet codenamed Babel, or Babel, whichever you prefer, to discuss the admission of a planet Corridan. We actually see Corridan again in Enterprise in the 4th season. That's also a source of dispute. I want to tell you this episode gives rise to many other episodes. In Enterprise's 4th season, you have an episode called United, which gives the hints of the start of a federation between the big 3, or rather the big 4 members of the Federation, the humans, the Vulcans, the Tellarites, and the Orions.
Oh.
And the Andorians. You're correct. I'm sorry.
And
that the Orions are pirates.
That's like the Gambino Prime family being the United Nations.
It's Gambino 10 times 5. They're on the outs. The big 4 in this are actually seen in Enterprise. That's in the 4th season. But I actually like the fact that we get the idea of it's kind of forming up like our own United Nations of, the United States, Soviet Union, England, France. So, the initial members of the United Nations, that is kind of what you're seeing right here, a space United Nations. And you can see it's not like an ideal society where everyone gets along. They all argue. They're all disagreeing. The idea. You see that also at the cocktail party at the beginning, which is, by the way, a cocktail party with the colored food. That entire set, it was the most aliens in any science fiction in one scene up until 1977's release of Star Wars.
Yep,
so
the cantina.
This episode. Yeah, and also the costumes, you'll see there are lots of them, although they reused a lot of the costumes, like Ambassador Ferris's blue jacketed thing is in the hallway. That's the ambassador you didn't like in the Galileo 7. Lazarus's costume is also in the background in the hallway as they're walking by. But, I could say, sometimes people wear the same jackets to work. But that was a cost-saving bit. I do like that cocktail party where they're all kind of hanging around. Did you enjoy that?
Yes, and this is, this is the first time that we see an Andorian, correct?
Yes, it is the first time we see a blue-skinned Andorian with the ear antennas. These don't move. In later versions of Star Trek, they move, and I mean later, that's in Deep Space Nine and in Enterprise, the ears actually move. We also see those little gold aliens. I should have written down what they are, but they do have a name. They were actually pretty kind of funny in the beginning. The tubes in the front, I think they were Ixians or something. I do like it. Well, Ixians, actually, that's from Dune. That's the wrong thing. We do see the pig-faced people, the Tellarites.
Tellarites do not argue for reasons. They simply argue.
The eye part was the biggest problem, as I'm sure you already noticed.
But it's not that bad. I mean, they look a little hideous, but I also, as I say, I appreciate it when, Star Trek or when science fiction in general shows that just because someone looks weird doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that that they're better people or worse people than anyone else. And wait, so the Andorians are part of the Federation, right?
Yes, they are part of the Federation. That's the big four right there.
Oh, okay. You did say Andorians. Gotcha.
Right. Right. So the Andorians, a violent race. The Vulcans, the logical race. The humans, the young upstarts, but the people that unite everyone. And the Tellarites, the traitors and arguers. So I guess they...
Are Andorians telepathic? I've seen different things. Some of them are, right?
Well, some of them are. That's an Enterprise. It's called the Aenar, Aenar. That's only a few of them. Most of them are not. They're blue-skinned versus white albinism or albinoism. I can never get that word right. They have some mild psychic ability. Strange New Worlds, if I recall, the engineer Hemmer's a Aenar, so he's blind. He's not necessarily telepathic. But in Enterprise, they had some telepathic characters. What about anything else from that opening bit over there? I mean, I do like the comedy sort of between the Enterprise crew, like McCoy saying, what was Spock like when he was a little boy? And she said, oh, he did have a Sailot.
Solid.
Sort of a fat teddy bear.
A teddy bear?
Yeah, a teddy bear with big... Do we ever get to see a Tailot?
The Sailot? Yes.
Pardon me.
Yes, in the animated series yesteryear, and if you were part of my Star Trek group, one of my members, or one of the members in another group, actually used to sew little stuffed Sailots. They were pretty fun, actually, to be honest with you. They were cute. They're like teddy bears with giant teeth.
On Vulcan, the teddy bears are alive, and they have 6-inch fangs.
I did like that. It's like, oh, yes, on our planet, the teddy bears are alive, and there goes McCoy's attempt to...
Is. That's why parents out there, get your kids a dog.
Or not.
Shush, don't listen to Matt. It's his
one
fish. Moral failing.
No, I have other moral failings. But
that's true.
The fish are... Yeah, it's okay. But that's why I have the agonizer. But anyway, I do like that there's also, you could see the conflict at that cocktail party where, like, the ambassadors are fighting each other. It's like, listen, tell me how you're going to vote. Mind your own business. It's pretty much, it sounds almost like going to court,
My government's instructions will be heard in the council chambers on Babel.
No, you. How do you vote, Sarek of Vulcan? Why must you know?
I thought that was...
Sounds like what's going on today. We're doing this on Election Day 2024. ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen.
yes, now we dated us. Yep. We have no idea who's won yet in the United States election. We all voted. I got the stickers, and I'm wondering where my children are going to post them all over the place. We have the stickers that say, I voted. I'm imagining in my mind saying, hey, why'd you put the sticker in the center of the TV, sweet child of mine? Hee hee hee. I'm waiting for that. But,
I assume that's
kids.
the younger one.
Oh, God, because it's the older one. Well, he's all into computers and Fortnite and stuff. But anywho, we get into this story where you get the kind of the estranged relationship between father and son, between Spock and his father, Sarek. They haven't spoken in 18 years. I haven't spoken to my dad in about 4 days. I guess I don't see how you could not talk to your parents in 18 years.
It's logical. It's a better way than ours, but it's not easy. It has kept Spock and Sarek from speaking as father and son for 18 years.
That's kind of sad, actually. I assume you get along with your parents well. I hope most people do as well.
Pretty well, but I mean, at the same time, I get along with them because I feel emotions. I am willing to bet you that Vulcans, unless there's anything to report, they probably don't check in too often. And he knows that his father disapproves of him joining Starfleet, so maybe they just didn't have too much to talk about.
But Sarek wanted Spock to follow his teachings, as Sarek followed the teachings of his own father.
They're both stubborn.
I doubt that he's going back. He's looking up his father every time he has to go back to Vulcan for Pon Far. And Sarek is probably busy. I mean, he's an ambassador.
But, Dad, I wanted to go to Tashi Station to pick up some... Oh, wait, wrong franchise. Yeah, no, I just like the fact that there was that kind of rift. Sarek wanted Spock to go to the Vulcan Science Academy. Spock said, I don't want to do that. I want to go to Starfleet. That's the whole basis of the argument. JJ's movie tried to make it different, where JJ's movie had it where Spock is like being told, well, even though you have a handicap of being half human, you can join the Science Academy. He goes like, yeah, take your job and shove it. I'm out of here. In the original
like that
series,
it showed that he was really into his mom. That he respected his human culture.
Well, that's in that movie into 2009. In this one, it's more of a personal choice, which I think is better crafted because you don't really have to see every last thing. Unlike modern entertainment, you could use your imagination. Although I did like the opening scenes of like where the younger kids are picking on Spock. That's also mentioned and is actually shown in the animated episode Yesteryear down to sort of the costumes. Well, not really. Yesteryear will eventually come to that in the animated series where Spock goes back through the Guardian of Forever to go to his own past. So that's actually kind of neat. And we do see the Ceylon. I do like also that there is that scene in engineering because we get something really minor. There's a very special effect there. It's the smallest display screen on the engineering deck that doesn't appear again where you see Uhura coming through a screen. And this is where we get our first sense of trouble. I actually like that little effect where, yes, Uhura, and he's talking to her through the video screen on the deck. I like that little bit.
Nice.
I'm getting, yes. And we're getting weird. Yes. Sorry. But that's kind of talking about the story. There's some weird sort of signal going on, and they're also being shadowed by another ship. So Kirk and Spock head to the bridge, and they can't figure out what's going on. They see someone following them. Now, if you go to the non-remastered version, and by the way, fans, I'm going to post, there's a YouTube video comparing the original version of this episode to the remastered version. You can see the difference. Mm-hmm. In the original version, it looks like just like an orange light. And that was partially because they were doing this in a rush and also because they were trying to save a buck. In this version, you see the Orion ship with its spinning fins in the background, kind of, at distance.
Wait, I have questions here. What
Go ahead.
Race are most of the Orions? They're not
they're
a
just,
race.
They kind of are. They are just a race of Orions. There's male and female. At this time, from original series, we know that the females are animal women slaves, which we'll discover in The Cage, and that the men are in charge. That's all you know. They're slave traders and they're criminals. That's it. And they're green-skinned. That's all you know.
An Orion guy dressed up like disguised himself as an Andorian.
Yes, he did have he was medically changed. That's towards the end of the story. There's an Orion spy to have him changed medically to look like an Orion. That's actually one of the things in the original series a lot of times, and also in Next Gen and DS9, where the people are surgically changed to look like another race. Yep. And this is actually one of the first times that's done. There's also, the concern of why are we being followed? And Kirk and Spock are debating, it's not the Romulans. It's no one else over here. And it's certainly not the Klingons. And that I took to dig on the Klingons. Like, yeah, they're too primitive to be this way. They're more in your face with weaponry, that type of thing. But
the Romulans have nothing like it. Certainly not the Federation or the neutral planets. What about the Klingons? I think it unlikely it is one of theirs.
I do like that. And then we come to a fight in the cocktail lounge between Gav, the Tellarite ambassador, and Sarek. I like that little fight scene, mainly for the ending line. Do you know which line I'm talking about? Where Sarek has the last line.
There will be payment for your slander, Sarek.
Threats are illogical, and payment is usually expensive.
So Gav says, basically saying like, you'll pay for fighting me like this, and it is illogical to threaten me, and revenge is expensive. Is essentially what he's saying. Like, don't mess with me, bro. I do like that. So that's one of the funnier lines in there, kind of. I'm paraphrasing, of course, so I'm going to put in a soundbite here. But that's what I did like, that you could see even though they're all one big happy federation, they're not always really that happy.
Of course, we are one big happy fleet.
The Vulcans are accusing the Tellarites of stealing from Corridan all their dilithium. And dilithium is the oil of the Star Trek universe. You have any thoughts on the political situation of that, or?
I thought it was great. I'm kind of wondering if DC Fontana lifted the plot from something else. Some sort of nice, good cloak and dagger thing. I don't know. It reminded me of just a good political drama from the time.
Actually,
I really dug it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then she got it out of whole cloth. I wanted to skip ahead just a little bit because there's something that I just
wanted to let you know where she got the idea of how to make Spock's parents who they are. She did get an idea. It was from This Side of Paradise. That's the Spores one, where Kirk insults Spock, like saying your father was a computer. And he goes, no, my father was an ambassador and my mother was a teacher. There you go. This is actually Sarek's second wife. I think Sybok, who's in Star Trek V, came from Sarek's first wife, who's not human, who was a Vulcan. This person over here.
And you reckon they divorced or something else?
I guess they got divorced, who knows?
Or is he a widower?
Maybe they separated. Who knows? I didn't really look into it. Sybok is not one of my favorite characters, so I honestly didn't care to look into that.
I actually like Sybok. I don't know what to tell you.
Of course you do.
I'm not quite a Final Frontier apologist. I wouldn't dare say it's a good movie, but there are moments that I really like, and it's shot really well. Whoever the cinematographer was A+.
Some of it was shot really well. Some of it is not.
And also, I think I've gone on this rant before. I really like the little. It's frustrating because there are some really good moments of smart writing. Like, I really liked actually the Interpol or Interzone planet that was like a political experiment where everyone would be. Different races would run it concurrently, and it just turns into a place where a bunch of bored ambassadors with nothing to do are getting drunk all day long.
No, I agree with you. I understand.
Anyway, I thought it was cool. Okay, wait. When you're ready, allow me to jump ahead.
Go ahead.
Captain. The scene where the fake Andorian and Captain Kirk get into it in the hallway, and he gets stabbed. And you see the knife come out of his chest, and it's one shot.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
They actually were trying to trim down the time because the fight was too long. Originally, they also had Kirk getting cut in the face, but they decided to have it to be an abdominal attack because it'd be cheaper and easier to hide. So they cut it really quickly in order to save time. It always feels like it's missing something in that fight scene. But Mike is talking.
What do you mean missing? No, it was amazing.
Oh, okay.
I see the knife come out of his chest.
Yes.
And then there's actual blood. I can't believe that it made it past the censors. No, it was a great fight scene.
Well, I like the fact that he gets stabbed in the back. I really did. I thought that it always seems a little clipped, but I enjoy that fight. That like Kirk is actually there alone, and you're wondering where is everybody else. But you figure it's like nighttime, so people are like asleep in their quarters. And they're not really expecting anything with a bunch of ambassadors there. I do love that scene. He's calling out for security from the deck, and he just kind of passes out. That is kind of cool. And that fight is also pretty cool, too. Kirk's in good shape as well.
Yeah. No,
It's,
and he's a brave guy. I mean, this is the captain of the ship getting his hands dirty.
Yeah, I do like that. I mean, and why is this guy trying to attack him? And then we try and figure out what's going on. You know, Kirk is in sick bay being wrapped up by McCoy, saying, like, you know, if that knife had been a little bit higher, you'd been dead. And so Spock's in charge. But we come to the other issue in the story, which is that Gav, the Tellarite ambassador, had been murdered not too long before this. And it looks like the only person who could have done it is a Vulcan. So that prime suspect is Sarek. And they're going like, well, that's logical, and everyone's like, yeah, logic. And Amanda says, I'm sick of logic, you know, this is your dad. And it turns out that Sarek couldn't have done it because he has a heart condition, so he wouldn't have been strong enough to do so. And this is where we go on an idea that if we use Rigelian physiology or the idea to regenerate blood and use Spock as like a blood bank to feed in Sarek's T-negative blood, we could do the surgery. And McCoy is like, well, I don't know if it's going to work, but Spock will not do it because Captain Kirk's been injured, and they're being chased by an alien spaceship. He's like, I can't hand this over to Scotty, who's, by the way, conspicuously absent in this episode. So is Sulu. Both of them are both out. So, but it's at least nice that they mentioned Scotty. I do like that bit. What do you think of that, like, medical drama, though, on the side?
Good, and again, I mean, how many things can they pack into this episode, right?
A
they
billion.
Are putting in Spock's background, the nature of Vulcans, family issues, family dynamics,
the Federation.
The Federation, political dramas, a conspiracy, a murder conspiracy, a medical drama. It's amazing. It's great. And DC Fontana's moving at such a steady clip. It's like, I don't know. And it doesn't feel overwhelming. It just feels like it all clicks in. It's like, 10 different pieces of a puzzle.
It sure does.
And the fact is this. You don't need the narrative to focus on any one of these because the through line is the strength of the characters of Spock and Sarek.
That's true.
So that's all it is. But, Captain, I mean, we were talking about this before we started it. There's a TNG episode called Sarek,
yes,
where Sarek comes to the Enterprise and he's becoming, I guess you'd say, senile, and Picard has to kind of do a mind meld in order to give him his mental strength so he can perform as an ambassador, and poor Picard is kind of in a dark, depressed state, and in a very touching moment, his romantic interest, Beverly Crusher, stays with him and helps him while he's in this very vulnerable emotional place. But again, it is a very similar set of circumstances where we've got Sarek supposed to do a job facing a medical emergency and having to rely on the Federation to get through it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, it just shows that the Federation and Vulcans, or humans and Vulcans, are compatible together. Something notable in that episode called Sarek, in one of the scenes that where Patrick Stewart, or Captain Picard, is kind of basically the conduit for emotion for Sarek, because Sarek's losing his ability to control his emotions. He calls out for Amanda, who is the wife before that, Perrin, who's the wife in that episode. So, but it's interesting because at that time, I don't believe Jane Wyatt is alive anymore, but it's a nice callback, again, to this episode and to Star Trek IV. It's the only times you actually see his parents. They didn't even come to his wedding. What type of parents are they in a mock time? Well, they were estranged for 18 years. They're like, you're a big man, you want to live in the universe, and maybe you should, we're not going to come to your wedding. Because that's why they weren't there. Mm-hmm. I did like that.
They're tough but fair.
Well, let's talk about just for a second for one of the head Andorian, that guy over there. You've actually seen him before. Do you know where you've seen him? The guy talking over there. His name is Reggie Nadler. He's the Andorian. He was also a Russian guy, a Russian operative in the Manchurian Candidate, but where you've actually, the original Manchurian Candidate, but where you've actually seen him before, because I'm sure you've seen Salem's Lot. He's the vampire Barlow. That was your Andorian.
Oh.
Is that wild?
No joke.
No, seriously. He had 2 burn marks on his face, so he was always played as a bad guy or someone evil. This one, he's not necessarily evil, but he tells Spock when they're trying to figure out why would anyone attack the captain, he goes, go by crimes of passion or want in order to figure out this crime, not by logic.
There is no logic in Feller's attack upon the captain. There is no logic in Gav's murder.
Perhaps you should forget logic and devote yourself to motivations of passion again. Those are reasons for murder.
I love the fact that the Andorians are more human than the Vulcans are human, since each alien race is a different type of, I guess you could say, emotional channel of humans, Vulcans being the logical part, Andorians are passion. I guess I don't know what Tellarites be, the love of bacon, maybe? I don't know. But they, love of argument. I do like the fact that the Tellarites like to argue for arguing, by the way. William O'Connell, he was the spy Orion. He's been in the Wild Wild West. I Love Lucy, Mannix, Mission Impossible. John Wheeler was Gav. He was actually basically did a lot of stage work, so this was his first TV role, and he loved it. Billy Curtis is one of the 2 copper-skinned short aliens. He's better known as Mayor McCheese, which I find hilarious, from McDonald's. So go figure that. But this was, there was 5 hours of makeup work on Gav. He even said that their eye work was a little bit hard to do, and one of the things that he had to do was look up in order to see what's going on, so that kind of gave the Andorians an arrogant look. So, I mean, we basically come down to where Kirk pulls a trick on Spock to get him to go deliver blood for his father, where this operation, where again Spock is turned into a Vulcan blood bank for his dad, for his rarefied Vulcan blood. But that's when the alien ship decides to attack. And although the Enterprise is a powerful ship, because that ship is coming at I think he says at warp 14, it's going so fast the Enterprise weapons can't track onto it. I do like this battle sequence and the fact that Kirk, even though he is really in a lot of pain and probably is bleeding out of his bandage, is still in command.
There. Right.
He's the boss.
He doesn't give a crap, man. God bless him. He's a good... Again, I was not a TNG series fan. I only ever watched the movies, and he's a passable captain in the movies, right? Mm-hmm. But they were always dealing with a conflict that's involving all of them, so you never really get too good a chance to see him lead. But I can see why people love him. He's not my favorite again. In fact, I think that he would probably be my third, but he's still a great captain. And if anyone's curious and has not been listening all series of our podcast, number 1 is Sisko, number 2 is Picard.
Oh, well, for me, he's my first captain, and you never forget your first. So he's always been my favorite captain. I do like the fact that he's decisive, and over here he shows command. That the ship is coming. It's actually beating the crap out of the Enterprise, or seemingly so. But the thing that's going on, they have almost the same weapons as we do, which is a little bit odd. That they're trying to figure out who it is, and it's like this little tiny, almost like a mosquito, or I would say dragonfly-shaped spaceship. At least that's what it looks like at first.
Sensors record standard phasers, sir.
Standard phasers. Good. They may have more speed, but they're not giants.
Captain, the intercoms are jammed. All All the ambassadors are asking what's going on.
Tell them to take a good guess, but clear that board, Lieutenant.
By the way, I have the Eagle Moss model of this. It's actually pretty neat, except the pieces don't spin. They bring the Andorian to the bridge, who isn't really an Andorian. He's got a fake antenna. This is also one time where security is extremely competent, or mostly competent. Do you notice, like they had him in a cover position, so when the first security guard is taken out, the second guy just stuns him. I thought that I like that. But when
I thought the stun looked very good. And again, I like Starfleet, being smart. I love it when it's like, the average guy, the average officer on Starfleet, like the guy who stunned him, is the equivalent of a Harvard-educated physics genius, right?
Yep.
By modern standards. And they're not going to make a dumb move. They're not going to do something stupid. They are going to be competent. And I like it when Starfleet is competent. And I hate it when they make dumb mistakes because it's not good writing.
You mean like shooting Nomad? I guess those two went to Yale as opposed to Harvard. Oh, Ivy fight!
Okay, then, yes.
But at that end where Kirk baits them in, I love that. He goes like, kill the power on this side. Kirk's main strategy is always to use trickery. He tricked the Romulans. He tricked the Fesarius. That's his main bailiwick, if you will. He always uses subterfuge to trick his enemies, and it seems to work quite well. They all fall for it. Khan falls for it several times. Not with the iron pipe, but in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, or Electric Boogaloo, whichever way you want to call it. But there you go. They blow up that Andorian ship. What did you think of what the Andorian ship looked like at distance in that entire last sequence?
Cool. I mean,
it is cool.
Interesting, obviously.
Yeah. The original one, like I said, is just a glowing dot. That's really, I think this is a lot better. And then we come to
I like this remastered pretty well.
Yeah. It again, even though this doesn't have a million like weird drawn out twists and turns because it's tightly shot and well paced and runs really quickly, it's so much fun and you get a lot out of it even through these few scenes. You could stare at each scene and get something different slightly out of each time. Like, Kirk leaves Chekhov as opposed to Uhura in charge. Getting down to the bridge, to the sick bay, we find out that the operation is a success, and McCoy pretty much tells everyone to shut up, which is pretty much the way it ends. I do like the way that it kind of ends. Yeah. And, you have the humor, like, why'd you marry Amanda? Well, it was the logical thing to do at the time. I did like it.
Emotional, isn't she? She has always been that way. Indeed. Why did you marry her? At the time, it seemed the logical thing to do.
I appreciate it, and I did like this in Enterprise, that Vulcans they suppress their emotions, but they still acknowledge that they have their emotions, and I'm willing to bet that if there was, I'm sure there's plenty of fiction on the internet about this, but I'm willing to bet that Vulcans approach relations and relationships and physical attraction in a logical way and acknowledging it and not trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
And affection and say, I love this person.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And by the way, I wanted to point out before one of my favorite iterations of Vulcans in recent years was, and of course Matt hates it, but in season 3 of Picard, there was a Vulcan gangster, and I loved him. And he says, like, basically something along the lines of, you need any utopia, there will be a criminal element. It's best if that criminal element is logical. And here's
illogical.
My favorite thing. No, he was totally chill. Kryn, he kept it together. Like, he was not a mustache twirling or anything, played by Kirk Acevedo, amazing actor from Oz, from many different things. But he smirks. At one point, he smirks. And you know that this is a rebellious Vulcan. This is a Vulcan who's been through stuff and enjoys with suppressing his emotions, but also enjoys giving into his emotions sometimes. Anyway, that was my little rant about how much I love Picard Season 3. God bless you, Terry Metalis. Go on.
Yeah, well, I don't like that character. But anyway, let's just talk about costs here. I want to point out to you before we come to the actual budget, the special effect for beaming up people was $810 in 1967, or $7,646.52 per person. That's a lot of money to make someone beam up. So that's why they use the shuttlecraft. But what do you think the total budget on this one was, with all the effects that you saw?
Oh my goodness! All the effects, all the makeup, all the cast, everything moved. And that knife gimmick, I'm going to say, I mean, I overestimated last time, so I'm going to say, $219,500.
You are wrong, sir.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you're wrong by a lot. This entire budget was $171,431.
I call shenanigans, Captain. There's
that's
no
what it was.
way.
Well,
there's no way.
Yeah, well,
it's impossible.
No, it isn't. Let me just point out to you the difference. So that's $171,439 in 1967. Today, that is $1,618,409.82 in 2024 dollars. Why? Because they were running out of money. So what you're seeing on the remastered edition is all the effects that they couldn't do. They reused the shuttlecraft. They reused the phaser blast. In fact, in the original version, the phaser blast looks a little bit off-colored. They reused music. They reused sets. They reused the costumes. The most expensive portion of this entire little bit was that cocktail party. And it was actually supposed to be a dinner, but they figured by making it a cocktail party, it'd be even cheaper still. So between all the things that they reused and the very small things that they did, they came in under budget. By the way, a funny note, Justman said that if NBC complains that they didn't start on a planet surface, they could go shove it up there, fill in the blank. So I thought that was pretty funny. They came in pretty well on this. Jane Wyatt liked the episode. She thought it was very classy. By the way, that hand gesture between Amanda and Sarek was made up by Mark Lennard and Jane Wyatt. Nimoy said they're a hand culture, and he said, come up with something. So instead of them like just walking, holding hands. So that's where that little two-finger thing comes up.
Yeah, I thought it was cute, although a little overdone.
Yeah, it's nice.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite ones. But one other funny thing in this is that this was so rushed. The screen credit for producer goes to John Meredith Lucas, although it was actually Gene Kuhn. They just never corrected it. In fact, they never corrected it in the remastered edition either, which I find humorous. But there you go. So that's the entire story. They find out it's the Orions who are trying to cause a war between all the factions of the Federation and elsewhere so they could exploit Corridan for its dilithium and sell it to both sides who need it.
Orion. Intelligence reports that Orion smugglers have been raiding the Corridan system.
But what would they gain by an attack on Starfleet?
Mutual suspicion and interplanetary war.
Yes, of course, with Orion carefully neutral. They'd clean up by supplying dilithium to both sides.
And that they are foiled, and the Enterprise saves the day, and McCoy again tells everyone to shut up, which is, I guess a good way to end this stuff. So
sure.
That's where we are. Unless there's something else you want to add, I think we should come to our very scientific 1 to 10 scale of our ratings on this. You want to add?
No, I dug the episode. I thought it was very well done. I thought that it has the seeds of a bunch. It was such a strong episode that it laid seeds for the rest of Star Trek history. For Vulcans, for the Federation. Oh, yeah, quick aside. In the Federation, do you automatically get checked out for citizenship if you're able to reach warp drive? Or Federation membership?
That's only in Next Gen. That's when they start saying that they check you out if you have warp drive. That doesn't really come up so much in TOS. TOS is more gunboat diplomacy, which is also true of the time that it comes from. Yeah. So it's more Next Gen. Was like, well, if you have warp drive, let's go talk to you. So there's a couple of episodes like that, and it's also in, if I believe, it's more aptly mentioned in Insurrection. That's actually said, right? But that's because the. Okay. But anyway, go ahead. So what are you going to give this on our 1 to 10 scale, Mike?
I love Sarek. I love Amanda. I love Spock's relationship. I liked the mystery. I didn't like the medical thing too much. Maybe that was a little tacked on. But all in all, great episode and everything that I want Trek to be for the most part. Maybe I could have used a little bit more action or high sci-fi. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Wow, look at that. We match again. I, too, am giving it a 9 out of 10.
Great minds.
Think alike. There we go. Yes, I give it a 9 out of 10 for very similar reasons. I like it because, again, Federation with a capital F. We see what the behind-the-scenes story is. We have political intrigue. We learn more about Spock's family, and there is humor in here as well. I do like the fact that the Enterprise is not all-powerful and able to pretty much ward off anything, but can also be damaged quite easily. I like the fact that we have an entire crew of professionals not whining and crying, but actually talking and doing their jobs. Uhura mans the comms. Chekhov is basically in charge of sciences, weapons, and navigation. Scotty, we never see. McCoy does know his medical stuff.
Scotty. They mentioned
Twice.
Scotty about being able to, and I like that they were like, well, we can always give it to Scotty. Like they're acknowledging he's a good bridge commander.
Yeah, he's the third officer. I mean, so we have competence all the way through. I do like the dynamic between Spock and his mom. It's between Spock and his mother. It's really well done. And the fact that you see, like, what's it like for someone not living in a human culture, living in a Vulcan culture, trying to adapt to different things. We've got various conflicts, and people talk and work through them as opposed to always being at odds. Except if you're Orion, then you have to be shot. So, that's okay. The Orions do come back in other things. They come back in Enterprise, and they come back in Lower Decks. But the way they're portrayed here as basically slave traders and so forth, it's, you can understand why they're at odds with the Federation, a united front of everyone trying to work together. But overall, I love this episode. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. It's a 9 out of 10 for Mike. It's a good time. So just to let you know, you want to know what's coming up next?
Yes, please. Give me a hint, please.
We have something called Friday's Child. It's an interesting story that takes us more into the Cold War aspect of Star Trek of the time. That's our next episode, where we come to see Friday's Child here at Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. Anything else you want to add, Mike?
Nope. Lovely time as always, Captain. Thank you very much for guiding me through. And happy to see Sarek, a good TV movie dad.
That's true. And, he works with his good TV mom, especially from Father Knows Best, because Jane Wyatt's character always seemed to know more on that show. Same thing here.
One thing I will say, I was very impressed with my captain's ability to rattle off all the trivia at the beginning of this episode, except, Captain, engineering, Enterprise D, you said deck 10?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So engineering is right next to the bar?
Yeah, well,
they put it...
Well, Scotty's there. I mean, maybe I had a sip of the True before I started this episode tonight. I know I could use it after this week. But, yeah, that's it. That's all for us we have for Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies this week. Don't forget to, if you like what we're doing here, like, share, and subscribe. Come on, everyone, subscribe and hit that notification and watch the whole episodes. And also send us an email if you like at yellingatgas@gmail.com. And don't forget to stop at our TeePublic t-shirt store at Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. And also subscribe in all the podcatchers out there. And as always, everyone, live long and prosper, and see you out there.
Dr. McCoy, I believe you're enjoying all this.
Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up!
Shh. Shh.
Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.